My stepmother convinced my dad to sell the house my mom left behind so they could share the money with her kids. But now they're begging me to just forget it ever happened. This is a throwaway account because I don't want any of this to mess me up again. I never thought I'd have to tell a story like this. That's why I don't want to use my real account. I'm a woman, I'm 25, and I've always had a complicated relationship with my dad, mostly because he's super self-centered. That kind of sums things up. But if you want more details, he always put his own needs and wants first, without even thinking about anyone else. I never understood what my mom saw in him. But they got married and had me. I asked her about it once, and she said he'd always been like that, which was hard for me to believe. So, we never had that close father-daughter bond. But my relationship with my mom was totally different. She was the very definition of a mother. She took me everywhere with her, and we did everything together. My parents came from totally different backgrounds. My dad grew up in a rough neighborhood, and his parents weren't the best role models, especially his dad, who sadly passed away in prison years ago. I never met my dad's parents, and my mom explained that it was because they were toxic and unreliable people. My mom, on the other hand, came from a well-known family that everyone loved. My parents met in college, and my mom always described their first date as magical and romantic. Again, I had a hard time believing it, because I almost never saw my dad treat her sweetly as I grew up. I knew my maternal grandparents never wanted my mom to marry my dad, but they eventually accepted and supported her decision because they saw she was happy. Sadly, my mom had several miscarriages and a stillbirth before she had me, so I don't have any siblings. After I was born, my mom got her tubes tied because she didn't want to go through the pain of trying again. I was just grateful that she at least had me. But my birth was just the start of her health problems. Soon after I was born, my mom was diagnosed with cancer. It was a really dark time, but in the end, happiness came back to our family. My mom managed to beat the cancer. Life went on, and we were grateful for this second chance. Everything was going well. She was a hard worker and had her own business. Don't get me wrong, my dad worked hard too, but he always fell for society's unnecessary pressures. He felt like he had to show off that he had money, even though he didn't. I mean, he earned a decent living, but nothing to brag about. My mom was the one who really brought in the money, but nobody knew that except my mom's side of the family. Everyone else thought my dad was the big earner. Sadly, tragedy struck again, and my mom's cancer came back. This time it was way worse than the first time. She had to stop working and eventually spent more time in the hospital than at home. At that time, I was in college, but luckily not far away. So I visited her every weekend. I had to make that trip every Friday night and come back Monday morning, but every second with my mom was worth it. My dad wasn't at the hospital much, but I figured it was because he spent more time there during the week when I wasn't around. My mom passed away shortly after my 21st birthday, and it was the worst birthday present I could get. At least I can say the funeral was beautiful, because her parents took care of everything, even though they were just as heartbroken as I was about losing their daughter. Then came the will, which my mom had taken care of before she passed away. It wasn't a sudden death, so she had time to get everything in order. A few months after my mom's death, my dad introduced me to my stepmother, Melissa, and her two kids, Joey and Nadine. It wasn't just introducing me to a new girlfriend, but he was planning to marry her. Not only that, he justified it by saying that my mom would have wanted him not to be alone. Then I found out that Melissa worked at the same company as my dad, so it was as suspicious as you can imagine. It didn't make things easier that my relationship with my future step-siblings wasn't the best. Joey and Nadine weren't as eager as I was to have siblings, so they wanted me as far away from them as possible. Melissa wasn't any better. She told me to my face from the start that she had no plans to be a mother to me, even though I'm an adult and don't need a new one, because she already had her own kids to take care of. Anyway, I wasn't home much, so it wasn't like all that affected me, because I wasn't going to have a close relationship with them anyway. The most I'd have to share with them would be a dinner or the holidays. Once my mom's inheritance was settled and we got our share, my dad immediately married Melissa and bought her a new house. Then he bought her a new car, and he's been covering all of Joey and Nadine's expenses ever since. They're adults like me, but they still haven't found their purpose, as he puts it, and they don't work or study. Since my dad bought a house with only 3 bedrooms and made it very clear to me that the 2 extra rooms were for his kids, I wouldn't be allowed to visit for very long stays. Then, There was the house where I grew up, which was in my mom's name, and she left it to me. My dad got 50% of what my mom left, while I got the other 50%. Which brings us to the present. I was currently in medical school after finishing my bachelor's degree in health sciences. I'm so glad that my mom left money to cover my tuition in case I didn't get a scholarship or financial aid. Medical school isn't exactly cheap. One day while I was in class, I got a text from my dad. I was surprised because we barely talked, and the last time I saw him was over a year ago. He asked if we could meet for lunch. I was in the middle of class, so I decided not to reply and read it later. But he was impatient and sent me another message, this time a long paragraph. He said that he didn't like how distant we were and that he wanted to work on our relationship. After class, I told him I'd meet him. We met on the weekend at one of my favorite restaurants. I was surprised that he actually knew it was one of my favorite places to eat since he made the reservation. We talked about our lives. And then he asked me about medical school. He said that he couldn't wait to brag that his daughter would be a doctor, which brought a small smile to my face. Let's be clear, it was the first time in a long time that he had a real conversation with me. But then he went further. He started to apologize for everything. He admitted to making a lot of mistakes after Mom passed away, and he said that he wanted to fix things. He told me that my stepmother and step-siblings also wanted to improve their relationship with me, which surprised me. My response was that I'd think about it. Then he asked if they could come to dinner next weekend so we could talk about everything and leave the past behind. Well, I accepted. If that dinner was as good as this one, I wouldn't lose anything, unless, of course, they poisoned the food. But I didn't expect anything like that to happen. At worst, I thought I'd just waste an evening of my life. After lunch with my dad, I went to my cousin Derek's house. He's my Aunt Meredith's son and is like an older brother to me. When I told him about my intention to reconcile with my dad and his new family, he was totally against it. He made it very clear that he didn't think my dad's intentions were genuine, and I kind of think the same way too. We talked about it for a while, and now I don't know. Do you think I should meet with my dad or not? Like I said, at most I'll waste an evening, and since my dad offered to bring the food, I don't think I'll lose much by meeting up. Update 1. I didn't get many comments before the dinner in my previous post, so I had to make a decision on my own, and that was to meet with my dad and his family. But going into that night, my dad and his new family arrived at my house for dinner. They brought food that they had bought, so I only had to serve it at the table. As I said before, my stepmother had this horrible habit of being very indifferent and never being willing to listen to anyone else's opinion or point of view, which always led to us clashing. However, I noticed a change in my step-siblings. Nadine, who never offered to help anyone, actually offered to help me set the table. She told me about her plans to go to college next fall because she had finally figured out what she wanted to do. It was about time, I guess. I was happy to hear that, and I told her that if she needed help, she shouldn't hesitate to ask me. While we were eating, my dad told me that he was very proud of me and all my achievements. Yes, my dad was still being attentive to me, which was even more suspicious. Then my stepmother asked me when I would graduate. I told her that I only had 3 months of school left and that I would start my residency afterward. She asked me where I would do my residency and if I was accepted in another state, what would happen to the house. Since I started medical school, I had been living in the house that my mom left me since there was a university nearby and I could go back. I was silent for a moment and realized that I had never really thought about that possibility before. However, Joey told her to stop stressing me out and that I would take care of it after my exams. It felt good that he defended me a little. Dinner went well, and we all agreed that we would work on improving our relationships. However, it seemed very strange to me that my stepmother was so worried about the house. Yes, it was suspicious. Later the next day, I noticed that my dad had posted on Facebook about my upcoming graduation, which made me feel a little weird. I understand that he's proud of me, but why does he feel the need to express it on social media? Yes, everything is suspicious with them. Now I would believe that my dad and stepmother want my house, but they bought one with the money that my mom left them. My dad also inherited Mom's business because he knew I wouldn't be able to take care of it. That's why she left me more money than to my dad, so that we would both receive 50%. Maybe he's after that money, but I don't know. It's not like I'm going to sign him a check. What do you guys think? Update 2. Well, now we know what my dad wanted and why this sudden change. I'm glad I at least didn't let him back in so easily. That dinner was just that, and we only agreed to try to improve our relationship, which ultimately won't happen. But let's get to what matters. I was busy preparing notes for my group study session when someone knocked on the door. It was the sheriff from my town. He took out a document and told me that I had been served. Served for what? He made me sign that I had received the notification, and then he left. I started reading the document, and that's when I realized what was happening, and I wasn't happy at all. I was furious with my dad. My dad had gone to court, and his lawyer had filed an eviction notice against me. He was giving me 30 days to pack my things and get out of the house. He was also claiming that the house rightfully belonged to him because his name was on the deed, which was a complete lie. But somehow he had managed to draw up a fake document in which he claimed that he was the owner of the house, not my mother. I decided to call him to end this nonsense once and for all, and there returned the old dad that I knew so well, that one who was cold with me. He was no longer acting like the man who 2 weeks ago was asking that we reconcile. He started yelling at me for living in his house. I told him that he was insane for saying that this was his house since it was my own place instead of living at his expense. I was laughing at him because he hasn't done absolutely anything for me since Mom passed away. I told him that I wasn't going to leave my house, which I emphasized so that there would be no doubt, and he said that I had to get out of his house, accentuating the his. I could hear my stepmother telling him that I had to leave right now, that he had to tell me, because they needed to move things, now. It made sense why she was asking so many questions about the house, because they wanted it. Although I still don't understand why they want it, since as far as I knew, they already had their own, which I must admit is better than this old house. I asked him what he wanted this house for if they already had one, and if by chance he was going to give me theirs. He told me no, that he simply wanted to return to a house with many memories for him, and that this was also a bigger house and perfect for all of them, and he is somewhat right because despite being an old house, it is also bigger. I repeated to him that it was my house and that I wasn't going to give it to him, but if he had an above-market offer, I would think about it. If not, he could go ask his new children to get him a bigger house, but then I told him that I remembered that they were lazy and had nothing, not even jobs or studies. He started yelling at me because I had no right to insult his children and that I was simply jealous of them. Of course, I was jealous that they were almost the same age as me and had nothing to show. It's okay that the house had been inherited from my mother, and I didn't get it through my work, but I managed to get into medical school on my own effort. Something that his new children won't achieve because they haven't done anything with their lives. The conversation ended more or less at that point. Now I have 30 days, according to the notification, to leave my house. That is, tomorrow Monday I will talk to my lawyer first thing in the day. Update 3. It's been exactly a week since I was served with the eviction notice, so I'm still within the deadline. Don't worry, my dad isn't going to evict me from my own house. Thanks to my Aunt Meredith, I managed to contact my mother's lawyer, Kit. My aunt even accompanied me to the meeting to talk to him since she was just as furious with my dad as I was, maybe even more. She was part of the family who hated the idea of my mother with him. Kit assured me that the house legally belonged only to my mother and that she had left it specifically for me. He had documents to prove it, but he would need a little more time to find the documents because they were archived, but that I shouldn't worry. After the meeting, we went for coffee with my aunt, and she was even more furious than before. The caffeine wasn't a good idea because she felt like she could split the table in two with her head. She started talking badly about my dad, and then she accidentally let slip that my dad had been having an affair with Melissa before my mother passed away. I asked her to repeat what she had just said. My aunt realized that she had revealed something unintentionally. She sighed and confessed. She told me that she always knew that my dad had been cheating on her with Melissa. She revealed that the affair had started the moment my mother's cancer returned. She wanted to tell my mother, but it wasn't the best news to tell someone who had to go through cancer again, especially at that moment where the chances of survival were very slim. She also didn't tell me after her death because she knew how bad I was and didn't want to rub salt in the wound. Besides, she had chosen to stay away from my dad. It's not that I had never thought about it, but I didn't expect my dad to be able to do something like that. The most I thought was that they felt something for each other, and only waited for my mother's death to start having something. It doesn't make it any better, but at least he wouldn't have been unfaithful. But now with the confirmation, it was very different. Everyone had found it very suspicious and strange that my dad married Melissa so quickly after Mom's death, but no one wanted to say anything out loud out of respect for her. I knew I had to expose my dad and get revenge for everything he's made me go through. While I waited for Kit to send me the documents, I tried to figure out how to get revenge on my dad. Then I started to investigate on my own. The first thing I did was search if the house that my dad had bought was listed on any sales portal, and it was. There aren't many in this town, and there it was, the house. I spoke to my aunt about this, and she told me that she could find out more, and after 2 days she told me that she had been able to find out that my dad needed to sell it, because not only has he lost my mother's business, but he has also taken out a mortgage on his house, and now he can't pay it. Now it is understood why they need a house so urgently, to the point of forging documents. Update 4. I know I've been silent since all this drama broke out, but I promise I have something that will make up for how little I've updated in this time. So, my dad called a meeting with our lawyers instead of taking me to court. I lied to him and told him that I would move out before the 30-day deadline, and I promised not to take him to court, that we could resolve this with our lawyers instead. Obviously, he accepted because he knew that he had no chance of winning. The day of the meeting arrived, and my dad immediately looked nervous when he saw Kit. My stepmother, on the other hand, had an arrogant smile, probably because she had no idea who Kit was or how life was going. Yes, that's how he is. As soon as we sat down, my stepmother wanted me to hand over all the keys to the house and sign a document so I wouldn't be able to claim the house in the future, in case I regretted it and wanted to sue them. But Kit took out his own documents and easily showed that the house wasn't theirs. He explained to them that they can file a false complaint with the police with altered documents, but that it wouldn't stand up if we went to court, that they weren't valid papers for a property trial, but they were for a fraud trial. He also said that he didn't specialize in that type of case, but that he knew someone who did. Of course, his name isn't Kit, but he could also ruin their lives. It was then that their attitude changed to love and peace. Suddenly, they were begging me to forget everything and promising that they would do anything to leave this behind. I shook my head and told my dad that I was going to expose everything he had done to me. Out of pure panic and fear, my dad confessed that my stepmother had forced him to do everything. He said that Melissa had threatened to expose his affair while my mother was still alive, and that he didn't want to do that to her, that she practically forced him to marry because if not, she would tell everyone that he had been unfaithful. My stepmother's eyes darkened, and that it was her fault that they had so many debts, that they needed a new house to be able to live. Then she admitted that the only reason she had contacted me was to find out more about the house and see if they could manipulate me into handing it over to them so they could sell it and pay their debts so they wouldn't lose their house. Melissa and my dad started arguing in front of everyone. They were facing each other, and it seemed as if there was no one around them. At one point, Melissa told him that her real plan was to sell the house, divide the money with her children, and leave my dad dealing with the debts alone. When they managed to shut up, Kit intervened to tell them that there was an infidelity clause in my mother's will. If infidelity is proven, all the money that my dad should receive should pass to me. I guess my mother suspected something. I can't help but think that she knew and didn't mention anything to ruin her last days with me. Kit also recalled that there were witnesses to what they said there, and that it wouldn't be difficult to get more information with a private detective. My stepmother didn't seem to care because the money was no longer there, and it wasn't her money, but I reminded her that from now on, being married to my dad, she would be much poorer, and if she divorces, she won't get anything because she would be divorcing a bankrupt man. Maybe I did wrong, but I mentioned that her children were not going to help her either, because they practically depend on my dad, so they would also be ruined because they have no work, no money, and no shame to be kept. This made her angry to the point of getting up with intentions of attacking me, but when she tried to throw a punch, or that's what it seemed like because she didn't have much grace to throw one, my dad blocked her before she could hit me. Although he took one. I don't know if because my stepmother wanted to give it to him or it was just the movement. Then my dad shouted that he was fed up with her and that he didn't want to know anything more about her. My stepmother lost her mind, threatening to expose all my dad's dirty secrets. It was a productive meeting. No one brought food or snacks, but there is enough information to take them to court. And although that will take a long time, I have already started doing some things, always with the approval of the lawyer who is not called Kit. The one who will take my case. I have made a very long publication on social networks telling everything my dad did. It's not that it will serve much, but at least it helps to show the kind of people they are, he and his wife. Update 5. I don't think this update will be very long, but there are some things I want to write. Melissa has already filed for divorce from my dad. My aunt and I believe that she has assumed the losses and wants to cut ties with my dad as soon as possible, perhaps before she is too old to find another sucker like him. My step-siblings have tried to connect with me. They say that they really wanted to have a sibling relationship with me, but that they didn't know how to do it. It's funny that they discovered it just when they needed my house. I told them that I sincerely hope that their mother can find someone rich, because with their intelligence they are going to suffer a lot in this life. I don't know if they understood the comment, but I didn't wait to find out and simply blocked them. Yes, my dad has also been trying to communicate, but my only message is that he do it through the lawyers. It can be Kit or the other. I don't care. If now he wants to become a father for his daughter, the lawsuit for the money he has taken will remain in place until he returns the last penny. My mother so stipulated in her will, and I want to honor her memory. It doesn't matter if my dad has or does not have money to pay. I think another update could arrive soon since my dad doesn't have much money to pay lawyers. He has a new job after resigning from his and taking over my mother's business. It's not the same place where he met Melissa. I only know that. Melissa at least is still working. Update 6. I love to bring you positive news, and even more when it's positive news for me. My dad has agreed to return the money by signing a contract in which 25% of his salary will be deducted until he pays the debt and its interest. Now I can say it. Kit confessed to me that it would be very difficult to prove infidelity after so long, so taking him to court would have been a bad idea for me since it was not an infidelity that was happening at this time. Before I could not mention it in case my dad read this, but now with a contract in which he agrees to pay, he has no escape. My dad will take a while to return all the money, but it's not like I need it immediately. His divorce with Melissa has also been finalized, and she has not received absolutely anything. The house was sold, but only to cover part of the debts. Yes, my dad will continue to be in debt for a long time, but they are not only his debts as Melissa thought. Some were also hers, including part of the mortgage and credit cards that were in her name, so the only thing those two divided in the divorce were debts. Melissa also has no work now, thanks to my publication. In the end, if it was useful since it caused an investigation in her company. The company where my dad worked had a strict policy against love relationships at work because they never end well. You don't have to tell me. My dad had resigned before his relationship with Melissa was officially official. Someone must have said that they saw them together before, I don't know, but that's what I've heard. I have a little pity for Melissa now. She has no work, with debts, and with 2 babies in her charge. It must be difficult.